Oh, it was a quick 30 seconds.
getting
Hey, we're
that
live.
reverb.
It was like 3 seconds. That was like 1/10 of the 30 seconds we thought we had.
All right, we are live for our rescheduled Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles podcast here from last week. And we want to welcome our guest here this morning, Tom Clark, who is the project development manager for Kleinfelder, and kind of give you a rundown on the podcast here for those that are new, and we'll get into our interview with Tom about some of the things that are going on here in Pennsylvania and his work and dealing with abandoned mine drainage. So just for those who don't know, our podcast series is a sort of one-of-a-kind podcast that converses with passionate community-minded partners, and we're trying to highlight outstanding reclamation and community cleanup efforts and showcasing stream improvement projects and successes, and trying to share some emergent ideas and technologies to reclaim and or remediate our legacy abandoned mines and water pollution problems that we have across the Commonwealth. And I'm your host, Bobby Hughes, the Eastern Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation Executive Director, and I'm joined by my co-host here, Ann Damon, Watershed Coordinator for the Western Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. First and foremost, we want to say thank you to the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds for underwriting the first 12 episodes of our podcast. This is a project that came about as our first joint visioning session between the Western Pennsylvania Coalition and the East Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, which was held last November. So it's been a year, and we're well underway with some of the projects that we jointly identified as good ideas to promote our mission. So yeah, we're hopeful that the live streaming, personal interviews, and discussing timely topics related to abandoned mine reclamation will engage our audiences at a whole new level. So feel free to put your comments and questions for Tom, our guest today, into the comments box of wherever you're joining us from, Facebook or YouTube. Okay.
Well, good. Well, let me introduce our guest here, Tom Clark, and give you some background on Tom before we get into the discussions here over the lunch hour. Tom's the Abandoned Mine Program Project Development Lead for Kleinfelder, where he's been since 2023. He's got over 28 years of experience in AMD treatment and abandoned mine reclamation projects, and kind of specializes in the development of abandoned mine land reclamation and AMD treatment projects. He's pretty much an expert in the assessment of mine drainage impacted watersheds, and does a lot of prioritization for projects with community partners across the state. And before starting with Kleinfelder, Tom was 16 years spent as the mine drainage program coordinator for the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, where he managed a lot of abandoned mine reclamation projects, design and construction of AMD passive treatment systems, and was a project manager on probably the largest, if not most expensive, AMD treatment plant that's ever to be built here in the Commonwealth at the Morris Run treatment plant on the Tioga River up in Tioga County. And prior to Tom coming to the ESRBC, he managed his own watershed consulting business for 7 years, serving lots of clients in Western Pennsylvania, including serving as the watershed specialist for the Indiana County and Armstrong County conservation districts during that time. And I think at that time he was awarded a watershed Renaissance grant that was the first given by the Department of Environmental Protection through their Growing Greener program for the restoration of the Bear Creek watershed in Northeast Indiana County. Tom's got a bachelor's from Pitt and a master's from Cal U, and we want to welcome Tom here today. How's it going, Tom?
Thanks, Bobby and Ann. Sorry about canceling last week. I got a tick bite got the best of me there. Everyone, check yourself before you wreck yourself when you're coming back from the woods. That was not a fun 4 or 5 days, but on the mend, and I thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, and really glad you're feeling better. Quite the impressive resume. background there that Bobby gave on you over the past 20, 25 years. And yeah. And you and I and Bobby, we've all known each other a very long time, pretty much our whole careers at this point.
Yeah.
But we want our viewers to get to know you a little bit better. So we start with some just kind of family and growing up background with each of our guests. So if you could tell us a little bit about where you grew up, where are you currently, tell us a little bit about your family, and any personal family connection you have to mining, abandoned or active mining, and abandoned mine reclamation, of course.
Sure. You may have to stop me here, because I can go on and on, but I grew up in Wimber, Pennsylvania, northern Somerset County, in a family where pretty much every male was either mining coal and or making steel. I mean, that's essentially what all the Clarks and Orlovskis did. I grew up in a half house, mining house, and Mine 42. And Wimber's one of these weird, it's a weird area, but it's like kind of cool too, where, Berwyn White Coal Company came in the late 1800s, I think 1896, found coal there, really good coal, formed a town because they wanted to bring in miners. And what they did is they just switched the syllables of their name, Berwyn, Winber. That became the centralized district, where the businesses are, where the offices were. And then each satellite deep mine around Wimber had a little town built around it. And that town name was the mine number. So I grew up in Wimber, Mine 42. My mother's side was in Mine 35 and Mine 36. My dad's side was mainly in Mine 40. And when you still go to Wimber today, you go to Wimber Hotel, have a nice beer, people still talk like that. Where'd you grow up? Oh, Mine 42. Oh, and everyone just those people know exactly where you're talking about. But it's like this really kind of niche area in northern Somerset and southern Cambria County, because it goes over the line there. But so I mean, I was big in the outdoors when I was a kid. Big fisherman, hunter, for a lesser part, but big fisherman. And I went into bachelor degree program to make my parents proud, so I went pre-med, and I was doing okay. Like, I was doing adequately, I guess would be the word. And then we got to the point where we started talking about broken bones and blood, and I was like, nah, that's not for me. So I was like, well, what can I parlay all these biology classes that I essentially took and not lose them? So they had a terrestrial ecology program there, so I jumped into that. And I'm going to start bringing up names as to like these pivot points in your life where you go somewhere and there's someone there and there was a pivot there that made you go a certain direction. I went to a Mount Laurel chapter trying to limit meeting because I wanted to volunteer. I wanted to be more active. After the meeting, I went up and Lenny Lickvar and Randy Buchanan, and I talked to them about, hey, I'm a young guy. I want to get more involved, want to learn about this stuff. They sent me to a volunteer event. And to me, that was the point where I'm like, I can make money doing this. This is stuff I would do as a volunteer. I can make money doing this. So then that's what I started doing. I put my resume in to get into BAMR in 1997. Had an interview with Pam Milovic. There's another name that I think everyone knows. Pam finds out she lives like 4 miles up the road from me in Elton. We just clicked. I worked there over the summer of 97. Worked out great, to the point where they allowed me to work over school even. I was working 10 or 20 hours a week when I was at UPJ. And then in December of that year, stop me if I'm going way overboard. But like in December that year, Sam asked me, she's like, well, what are you doing next summer? I was like, I'm just coming back. This is a great gig. I'm making $850. All my buddies are making $425 bagging a giant eagle, I'm making a lot of money. She's like, Tom, you got to be in school to be an intern here. And I was like, oh no. So then I was like, well, I better go to grad school then, because this is a good gig. So I got in with Dr. Kimmel down at Cal U. You want to talk about another pivot point there, person that's really well known in the mine drainage community. Was able to stay on there with Pam for 2 more years, worked under Kimmel. I mean, who two better people to work under? Most of my summers were spent in the passenger side of Rich Beam's truck being a business. I mean, how much better to be as a young guy in the field, you know? And then the watershed specialist positions opened in 2000, and Pam put me on them. I got into Indiana, did that for 7 years. I think Bobby talked about my transition to SRBC. And hey, Bobby, guess who came in as the watershed specialist right after me in Indiana County? None other than Ann Damett, you know? But I mean, it's funny how those small interactions with people, like a Lenny Lickvar, like a Pam Milovec, like a Rich Beam, like a Dr. Kimmel, just changes that where you're going just a little bit. And then you start wondering, well, what if I went the alternative? It's, you know, what's that poem about two roads and divided in a wood? You know, I took the one less traveled by. You start thinking about those things, and it's cool to think back and realize the amount of people that had some sort of impact on where you are now. And I can list 10 more names that have had similar impacts to those that I just listed.
Wow. I can relate to all of that for sure.
Bobby,
Bobby,
we
are
can't
you
hear
still
you.
with us?
We can't hear you, Bob.
So I'll go ahead with, yeah, it's all right. He might have to log out and back in. I'm not sure. But yeah, so how about continue a little bit more with your early career there, volunteer efforts throughout the years, and how did that then lead you finally now to where you're at with Kleinfelder?
You know, it's funny. I'll go back and I'll kind of start with that watershed specialist position. Those were great. I mean, those hit at the right time for someone like me who was like 20. Well, I would have been 24 coming out of grad school, looking for your first, you know, technically real job. And it's funny. I interviewed at like 5 counties, I want to say, and I got offered at 3, and 2 of those kind of intrigued me the most was Blair, and just because really closeness of where I live to was Blair in Indiana County, and then I accepted Indiana counties just because it had more mind range, because that was what interests me the most. And I always got to throw this out here for my buddy Jim Eckenrod there, who became the Blairsville County watershed specialist. They picked me first, Jim. I just got to throw out there. I joke with him all the time about that when we're out and about. But yeah, and it's funny. Those positions were great because you got, it allowed you to essentially manage an entire county for whatever your expertise was in. And at that time, I don't know if I was an expert per se, but like, I guess my interest was in mine drain. So, and Indiana had a bunch of it. And there was an influx of watershed associations too that came about during that time, where you were able to go in and help them along, because, you know, they were layman people in the community who wanted to do good, but didn't often know which way to go. So, man, and the amount of people you were able to meet there through that process, I'm still friends with today. You know, the John Dudashes of the world. Me and John still talk, and like, you know, we came to be, you know, 25 years ago. I haven't been at, you know, Indiana for what, 18 years or something like that, and John and I still interact. So, and that's what's great. And then, you know, what's funny is that I had twin boys. You start thinking about, well, you know, maybe I should try to get something a little better, higher paying, this and that. And Beth Dillon and Jen Orr called me. There's 2 other people. They called me and they're like, hey, we're leaving SRBC. They're taking our positions, making one, and it's AMD focused. We already dropped your name. Sent in my resume down there, interviewed with Andy Gavin, and I did that for 16 years. And that, you know, SRBC is a great place to work. And I think a lot of people were surprised when I left there. But it was that another thing there too, where you get to that point in life, you're just like, all right, what's next? You know, I did this for 16 years. What's next? And, you know, with the IIJA funds coming in and the ability to like do massive projects, which that's what I wanted to do. That was the next step to Kleinfelder out of SRBC.
So Tom, like, what do you think was one of your favorite projects so far throughout your career that that you've been working on? Because I know over the years, you know, in your career and mine and Anne's as well, I mean, we've done some really large projects and a lot of assessment work, but whether it's treatment versus reclamation or reforestation type projects that you've worked on, which one kind of sticks out in your mind as being one of your favorites? Knowing that you've done quite a bit of work, and you've published a lot of great documentation within the SRBC on projects, even here in the anthracite and the North Branch, and then stuff you've worked on in the West Branch. What one kind of comes to mind?
I think, you mentioned, and I think Bear Run's tough to not pick because that was a watershed-wide restoration of a stream that was pretty gooned up with mine drainage. And that was the watershed where we got the first Watershed Renaissance Grant Award, which essentially funded, I won't say all, but most of what we needed to get that stream right. So, most of the problems on that stream, there's two main branches. You got the North Branch, which is like some of the best water in Indiana County. It's full of wild trout. I think it's Class A now. They just re-upped the Pennsylvania Boat Commission, got it up to Class A status here recently. But then you had the South Branch, which was like dead. It was essentially fishless. I wouldn't call it dead. I mean, there was, macroinvertebrates that can take the pollution in it, but it was fishless. In the 3s pH, iron and aluminum. And you go up there now, and mind you, it's not perfect. There's a stretch there still that has some seepages that are essentially just really hard to capture and get to a point of treatment. But you can go throughout that entire stretch of stream now and catch trout from headwaters down to its confluence of the North Branch. And that took a lot of time. And, Ann was heavily involved in that project. When I left at SRBC, she came in. I think when we were doing like phase 3 or phase 4, Ann, I think is when you came in, and we worked at that as kind of like a team. And I think the last project we did there was 2015. And that was like a big refuse reclamation there that was turned into a game commission food plot then. So you always like those projects where, like you mentioned it, Bob, where you're hitting like multiple check marks. You're getting refuse, but you're also improving wildlife habitat and improving water and reducing a hazard to people. Man, if you can, I love those types of projects. That's like, even like the pit projects now where you're just reclaiming a pit. That pit could be delivering water down to a mine pool that's being polluted and discharged further on. And that's a project to where, you're reducing a hazard, you're creating wildlife habitat, you're reducing pollution. Man, those types of projects are fun to be involved with just because of that diversity of impact that they have to what we're all trying to do here, return rivers for communities. That's what we're here for. That's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah. We want
to improve water for people.
Yeah.
And in doing some of those projects, and we've talked about this a lot. I mean, you're a person that fishes. I don't know if Ann fishes a lot, but I do as well. And when it comes to trout and our native brook trout species and other species of fish that are in some of these waterways, we often start to consider more of the ecological restoration as a part of the mine drainage treatment that's going on too. And over the years, we've learned that, in some of the ways that these treatment systems are being built and the type of reclamation work that's going on, we're really trying to keep that cold water cold, and we're trying to not have any kinds of thermal impacts to the stream below where a lot of these treatment systems are. And it seems like there's more of that discussion and things happening now around that to bring that into the fold. And I know you and I and others have really advocated for that type of consideration with both the state and any type of funding partners that we have to do that work. And I think Bear Run is probably one of those that you're seeing and what you've seen come back just in terms of the trout, whether it was native brookies or wild browns coming in, that's a whole other part of the restoration story that we like to tell, because pretty much many streams in Pennsylvania were always historically native brook trout streams. And if we can keep the cold water fisheries cold water and the mine discharges help doing that, then we should. And if we could, to try and do that, but it may not be that case all the time. But any kind of fishery restoration is a bonus, on top of the clean water.
And that thought kind of came out of that Bear Run and a little bit of my thesis. My thesis project was looking at this very large passive treatment system. And what you do, you put water in, It sits there, cooks in the sun of August, and it was coming out at like 85 degrees at some points in August because we had a thermal unit there at the end. And then we were putting that water, it was now clean, but we were putting that water into this really small cold water fishery. And I started thinking, wait a second, all right, we're cleaning that water, but we may be changing the whole fish population dynamic downstream, from changing it from a cold to like a cool or a warm water fishery. Maybe trout won't come back. And that's where that thought process kind of came out. So when I started then doing, hey, let's try to, you're going to increase temperature through a treatment system regardless, but let's minimize it. So capture the discharge in a way where you don't see it. It doesn't keep the water underneath your limestone to keep it out of the sun. Use ponds and wetlands just strategically. Wetlands better just because you're getting the shade from the wetland plants. Things like that to consider, and I think I see that more now from other people. And I think a lot of that came out of us talking about that, 15 years ago, whenever it was, So that's always nice to see when you're sitting in the audience, you're like, I had a little bit to do to that, or we had a little bit to do with that, So yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if this might be a good time just to tie into the kind of temperatures of mine drainage and some of the newer technologies and innovations that I see Kleinfelder is using, and we've started to use out here with EPCAMera with our use of drone technology. And I know you and work that Eric Oliver has done for you in the Hawk Run area, my old stomping grounds when I was an intern for the state at the district mining office before they moved over to Moshannon. You're working on a project out there that's starting to really take a look at the consideration of the temperature changes in the different discharge water over there, but it's more so probably on the difference between where the water is coming from, but it may tie into the downstream restoration eventually. And I'm not real familiar with that part of the Moshannon to know what the fishery is down below there, but what kind of water, and if you'd like me to show the scene, you can maybe describe some of the, what you're seeing about the Hawk Run drone footage and FLIR imagery technology that you guys have been working on.
Sure. It was kind of a different use of, when deep mine water, this is water that's coming out of a mine that's about 120, 130 feet below surface. So when it comes to the surface artisanally, because it's under pressure, it's cold. So it's running about 50 degrees, give or take. So Hawk Run was one of those streams where we knew there was 2 discharges. We knew there was 2 that we knew about. But it's such a hard watershed to get into because it's very wetlandy, and it's not just difficulty, it's a safety concern because like I said, these waters that are coming up out of old shafts vertically, and sometimes they're not all mapped and things like that. So I don't want to go myself, but I don't want to send an intern out there either. They all deserve to live, right? Interns deserve to live.
Yep.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part, they're doing all our grunt work. We need them, So Eric Oliver and I started talking about how could we fly this thing with a thermal drone and then see if we have the knowns or if there's any unknowns out there. And then if we can pinpoint them, then we can target them, walk into them safely, take a look at them, and, not only be safer about it, but save time. So we Oliver's kind of like this techno guru, and I'm not. And I would just kind of tell him, this is what we need. He'd figure it out. We rented a drone with a thermal apparatus on it. He figured out how to program it. We flew Hawk Run in like an hour and answered all our questions. It would have took weeks probably to do on foot. So I have if you want me to share that now, guys, I'll kind of share that for the audience.
Yeah.
Let me know if that works. Hold on one second. I'm 50 years old, and this is all, it's coming.
Hold on. Yeah, I'm going to share it.
There we go. We did it. We did it. So this is kind of like what we found. So The light blue, what I would say like the the baby blue, that's Hawk Run, and it's flowing from northwest to southeast. And then that really, really dark, almost black, really dark purple maybe. That's the Acme shaft discharge. That's a known. But like we wanted to prove concept first that we can fly this thing and find water that we might not know is coming up out of the mines. And what's nice about the drone, right on the screen, it will tell you if you put the target. There's like a little target on it, just like you're shooting a gun. There's a target with a scope, and if you put the target onto any of those colors, it tells you what temperature it is from 300 feet in the air, which blew my mind. I mean, but you could see how that discharge is about 10 degrees colder than the mainstream flow. So what we did then is we flew the entire watershed where we had some questions as to whether that was. And what we found out was and there was the reason we went this way is because there was unaccounted for sulfate loading. So when we did a watershed assessment, there was loading from sulfate. We're like, well, it's not from these two discharges. Where else could it be from? So what we found out on a more around the Morrisdale 3, which is the second discharge we all know about, it looks like that discharge is popping out several locations. So it's the same discharge, just popping in several locations. But that's what it was able to answer for us. I don't know if we would have been able to answer that on foot because, one, it's just hard to get to. Two, you can't see it visually like you can from 300 feet in the air. I think we would have misidentified it. And we did this in an hour. And that's the big thing. You save your client time and money. You're safer about it. And then, like we're talking about, and Bobby and I were out at a similar situation yesterday over in the Western Middle Coalfield. We're thinking about utilizing this again because we really don't know where the Connerton boreholes are or how many sources of water could be coming out. It's a very similar situation. We can fly that. We know this now. We could probably fly it in a half an hour because we know how to do it now. It just saves so much time and effort and do it safely. So it's crazy. I'm too old to learn this stuff, but I'm bringing people on to know how to do it. And it's kind of like what I'm doing here, and it's working out great. And the applicability of it is you can use it a lot of places.
Yeah, it'll be fun and interesting work to do down there, and our partners in the Mahoney Creek Watershed Association and Roseanne Weinruck and others to fly over that area around Lost Creek. And I could tell you that when I got my license, because you actually get it almost like a driver's license for drone flying, and it's good for 2 years, and I had to study for like 6 months to pass the test because it was like going back to college, and I kind of felt like Rodney Dangerfield and wasn't getting any respect. But I eventually passed that test and aced it, and it's given me a whole other perspective on flying drones. But I mean, you study enough that you could probably fly a Cessna at an airport with the amount of information you have to take in just to understand the weather and the different no-fly zones and restrictions on it. So it's not as easy as one thinks just to throw a drone up in the air and fly it when you've got a lot of different places you can and can't fly it, and the sort of the responsibilities that come along with it. But the technology is really cool, and if you keep that drone within your line of sight and have somebody helping you out, I think between us and getting Eric down there to take a look at that with our drone would save us a lot of time and effort on that particular project. So there's some cool innovations and cool technologies that we've seen that has been developed over the last 20 or 30 years of doing this kind of work that we've all seen. So we've really come a long way. So it's a good example.
Eventually, Bob, I mean, we won't have to go in the field at all. We'll just send the robots, like the way But the big thing with the data, it's easy to collect that data. It's the post-processing, which can take some time and some ingenuity and the need for that. And that's where I think we have figured out now. So yeah, I'm excited to expand upon that type of work.
That's good. That's good. Well, yeah, as we're moving a little bit along here, trying to see if some of the people that might have been pretty influential. I don't know if we've talked about that as much as more a part of your early career, but who's been really influential in your career, maybe as a mentor, and the work that you've been doing and why you've been doing it over your sort of long career here, as all of us have been in this game. Who comes to mind?
I always make a joke to start like that, a kind of question off, like, is like, just with my family in general, I'm just trying to get them all into heaven, because they were the ones that were mining the coal and oftentimes leaving behind what I'm now trying to fix. So, when you grow up in that type of situation, I think it's ingrained in you to start, you know what I mean? But like I already mentioned a few, and I think, the Lenny Lick bars who kind of like, go volunteer here, Tom. The Pam Milovex, who was like, this guy knows enough and we should try to train him up. Sit in that passenger seat, learning a lot from Rich Beam for 3 years. I mean, you name someone you want to learn off of, dear Lord, you know what I mean? And then the people, when I was there, when I was at, Bammer, that you were like, man, I got to learn more from that guy. Mark Keelar comes to mind. You know who else comes to mind? Bobby Hughes. Bobby Hughes. Not to like stroke you, but like I'll never forget, like when we were watershed specialists, they took us down 40 Indian Town Gap, and they just littered us with like presentations about, oh, here's how to fill out this form, here's how to and then by Tuesday you were like, oh, get me the hell out of here. And then Bobby comes out there like David Lee Roth talking about, mine drainage. And you're like, there's my dude right there. And I then say, I got to know this guy. 25 years later, we're super tight.
Best friends.
Best friends.
Yeah.
Anyways, but then you talk about the Dr. Kimmels of the world who made me know how to research this stuff. Because before then I didn't. I knew what I wanted to do, but I wanted to like learn how to get it from A to Z. Doc Kimmel. And then, I had the pleasure of working with people like Andy Gavin and Jamie Schallenberger down at SRBC, 2 great bosses. I mean, that taught me a lot. I've been real lucky. I've been real lucky to like fall in with those people you want to fall in with. And then when you start doing like that massive work, to build plants and things like that, the Tom Moleskis of the world, who's now retired, and man, his knowledge base loss at Bammer is just intense. But like what he and I did there for like 5-year period to get Tioga River over the hump there and get it moving to like we're going to be putting out the construction next year for that plant. That's might be the biggest plant in the world. It's funny. It's such a tight community, and I think we help each other so much. There's some competitiveness. It's like particularly when you get on the private side, but I think even at that point, like Eric Cavazza, he works for Tetra Tech. Man, there's a guy. He's my prime competitor, but man, I respect that guy and what he did at Bammer, and he was there when I was there. Learned from him. We're just such a tight community that helps each other, and I think that's why Pennsylvania is making such massive strides in returning waters and lands. I think better than any other state. I think a lot of it has to do with that. Just the way we all. Yeah.
That's so true, Tom. I'm really glad that you called attention to that, because I wasn't even thinking of that before we started talking. But yeah, it's just so true. We're such a tight community and really there to help each other out. And your long list of people that were influential to you and over, a 30-year time frame of your career. And like you said, now you're 50. It's clear to me, you're going to be that for these upcoming people. We're in our middle ages technically, and thinking with this existential kind of discussion, thinking that, you're going to be that guy everybody wants to be in with, everybody wants to be trained by and know and be involved in the projects you were involved in. What is kind of a legacy you would see yourself leaving behind someday, if you ever have thought about retirement, or what it will look like for you in the future? What are you going to leave for the next group that's coming up?
It's funny you mention that because my wife Christy and I just had a conversation about this not too long ago. Our kids are juniors in college. We have twin boys; they're juniors in college, and they're going to be done. And that allows us some flexibility. We always kind of want to be snowbirds. We're kind of beach people. And that may happen in a year and a half. So Christy's,
Oh my gosh.
when are you going to retire? Like, when's retirement? And I'm like, here's the thing. I think I will always have my foot in the game, always, until I love it too much. Not to like, is there a point in the future when I go part-time maybe or something? Sure. Right. In terms of legacy, I think that's one of the reasons why there was a few reasons why I left SRBC for Kleinfelder. One was I wanted to work with Sammy Staley. She won the award for us up Tioga River. We worked so well together, and we kind of were all like, let's work together under the same banner. So that's like one of the reasons. But like one of the other reasons was I wanted my hands in massive restoration work. A lot of those things we talked about, yeah, you're putting a treatment system on, you're returning a mile or two a stream, and it's great, and there's going to be fish in that stream. I wanted 20, 30, 40 mile stuff. And that's what I'm able to do right now. Tioga is 20 plus. We're, a bunch of us are working down Moshannon Creek. You want to talk about a stream, and if we can return Moshannon Creek, that was a stream that everyone thought was unreturnable. We don't think that based upon data. Working down Shade Creek, there's another one that's pushing 20 miles. Once we get that done, it's in the backyard of where I grew up. I was fishing and probably drinking beer at too young of an age back in the Shade Creek headwaters there. And like now I'm helping to restore that watershed. And I think that's the legacy I want to leave, that anytime anyone sees one of these plants, that I had some sort of assistance to get that plant up and running, to where to go back to it, we are giving communities back clean water. That's, to me, that's the goal in all of this. To bring that community that maybe was, economically viable when coal was there, but now it isn't. It's losing population. Well, how do we bring those communities back? I think Johnstown's a great example, right? I feel like I'm from there. I feel like Johnstown's on the upswing a little bit. One of the reasons I think it's on the upswing is because the rivers are returning. There's people catching fish down by Point Stadium. 20 years ago, everyone thought you'd be nuts, saying that or even implying it, So, and I think then people, younger people who will want that green aspect, who want that quality of life, they'll move there for that. And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't think about, is the economic ramifications of what happens after you return a river. It's all positive in my mind. So, but that's my legacy I want to, give back, is that I had some sort of impact on a lot of these large river restoration projects.
Oh boy, Tom, that brings a tear to my eye. I really,
man, I'm good like that, Bob.
It's such a heartwarming, spiel.
You guys are rough. You guys are rough, but you're also very sentimental. Yeah.
So,
I think we're of that age, Bob. Yeah. I think we're of that age where we start thinking back, harkening back.
Yeah. When I was young, I know that's we've gotten to that point, but I really think that even between the three of us, we have lots of things that are in common, and we all have these shared interests, and working with volunteers and community leaders from all of these coalfield areas that we've been working on for years. And so when you're with those people, things just kind of click. And we don't care if we're in a stream that's orange, but if it's red, or if it's polluted with aluminum, iron, manganese, or it's littered with trash, or we're out there cleaning up trash, or we're planting trees, there's an unspoken word that I think many of us have. And Anna and I have talked about this in previous podcasts with other folks, that there's more to it than just the clean water, but there's just it's a way of life for us. It's something that we've grown up with and have this sort of feeling of the need to contribute and help to heal the land and waters across the Commonwealth. And I think that's sort of been ingrained in us, and it sounds like that's the same for you as well. But outside of, the work that we do, that we seem to put our life in day and night, and, could be after midnight doing midnight texts, back and forth about projects, which we often do. What are some of the other problems of the world, or things that today that you can, you think you can contribute to besides, the abandoned mine issue and the legacy that we're dealing with. Do you have anything else that you'd either like to see done or you may hope to do as you continue forward with the remaining, time that you're going to be doing this kind of work?
It's an interesting question because I think I already said that I'd probably always have my foot in the game in this. As long as my wits were there, I'd always want my feet into the game. That's just something that it would intrigue me doing in the future, is maybe as a more volunteer basis and things like that. I think I already mentioned that, my family, we're kind of beach bums. We like kind of just sitting on the beach and fishing and having a good time and stuff like this. And went down and saw my buddy Jake Wilson there last year. He lives down on Sunset Beach. He worked for SRBC for years. A lot of you may remember Jake. We're still real tight, so I went down and saw him. And one of the things we went out there to do was to volunteer. There was some I can't remember. Is it like loggerhead turtles? Something. One of the turtles that are endangered. There's a group there that finds their nests, and then they essentially just sit there and keep the predators away to get that population back up. And I was like, I'm watching this going, I do that anyways. I sit on the beach all day long. I'll sit there and I'll protect some endangered turtles, because I think, I love hearing about those stories about something that's been taken off the endangered species list. Like I just read about the humpback whale who just got removed. That's a big deal, and imagine that person who had just even a little bit of impact to make that happen. That has to feel great. You know what I mean? So if I can make my little bit of mark on maybe a turtle population down North Carolina while I sit on the beach with a cold beer, and you know what I mean, that sounds like something I could do. Sounds like something anyone could do. So maybe something like that.
Sounds like
that's
a
great.
good future.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun.
Or maybe you could be a cornhole champion.
Well, no, there's only one of us that was on here that was one of those, but it's been many years since he won. Not naming names.
Yeah.
Hey, Ann,
I came close.
Did you hear how he lost 21-0 this year?
I did. Yeah, I was there.
Okay, I'll just tell you again. I'll tell you again the next time I see you too.
It was rough, but my entrance was grand and unforgettable. So that counts for something. And I did get to the finals this year, and we always have a fun time with that particular event and effort. That Kleinfelder has sponsored since our first effort to pull this together as a really an interesting way to network with our friends and consulting firms and vendors that come to our annual conference on abandoned mine reclamation. And so that sponsorship role that you've played over the years and the last few years has been pretty important and integral to our statewide conference. And I think that adds an element of fun that we all talk about, and it's something everybody can get involved with, and it's a good way to network and exchange information and get people to know each other. And I think our whole reason for doing that was just to everybody to let their hair down, or the hair that they have left, and have some fun in the evening on one of the nights of the conference. And that's really become a major component and a go-to for the conference. So I'm more than happy to be the brunt of some jokes, but we'll always go down as the inaugural cornhole champion, and people will be coming after me each and every year. So I really enjoy that, and I think it adds an element to the kind of efforts that we put on, and not only exchanging information about cleanups and treatment and technology and partnerships and funding opportunities, but you've really got to just let people be who they are, and that's one way to do it. And if I could make a little bit of fun of myself, and we all have that sort of humility about us, that it makes you really down to earth, and people can obviously have a good time and enjoy themselves. And I kind of want to thank you for that, and that sort of effort that you've done.
I think it was exactly what our conference has been missing the last few, since
what's great about it, and I think you hit on it, it's just the getting to know people You knew the name of, you know who they were, but to actually become friendly with them through playing a silly game that we all kind of make fun of Bobby about, you know what I mean?
Especially when we're all from different sectors. Like all the
Right.
watershed people knew each other, all the state people knew each other, all
Right.
the consultants, knew each other or maybe didn't. But this is a way to intermix everyone and just really, take the guard down. Is that the saying? Let your hair down. I don't know.
Look at it like this here, like Bill Nieder was one of the winners, right? And I knew who Bill was and things like that. But now he's walking into next year's conference with a damn nickname, Nieder to the Heater, because he put last year. You know what I mean? And that's the great part of it. Then is everyone knows a little bit more about everyone else, and then that too, what everyone else can provide. Because sometimes even with consulting firms, you don't have everything that you need to get a project done. So now well, I know they do this. I can give them a call. And I think that's what all that provides for.
Yeah.
It's great because Michael Baker Engineering has called upon us to help out with one of their projects that we were going to be hopefully discussing with them further on, because they want to look at some of the mine pool map in certain areas that they like our assistance. So it was a good interaction and good follow-up here now afterwards, that we'll be able to have a chance to kind of get to work with some of those folks in the industry and pick them up to speed.
Well, and speaking of engineers, Tom, why don't you tell us some about what Kleinfelder specifically can offer? You're a sponsor of the conference. Also, you bought a sponsorship of the podcast. So with that comes, a little bit of a sales pitch to us. We're going to play your ad and everything, or your little commercial. But first, let's start out by telling us some about what Kleinfelder can do for us.
Just if I have just a second too, just even almost like a little story about how kind of like Kleinfelder's Abandoned Mine program came about. I think I mentioned it before. Kleinfelder won my bid for the Tiger River active treatment plant when I was at SRBC. I didn't even know who they were. I was like, who's this Kleinfelder group? They were the ones but they had the best proposal with the best price. And then we all started working so well together. And Sammy Staley, who's my supervisor, she's the program manager, she wanted to kind of create an actual program, an actual abandoned mine program underneath Kleinfelder. They didn't really have that. They had pieces scattered everywhere, but nothing under like an umbrella. So I came on board in early 2023 to help her do that, to help her build a team that can offer anything that anyone would ever need. Watershed Association, Conservation District, Camera, whoever. If you need something that done that you don't have the capabilities of doing, we're going to have that for you. So the one thing we really tried to do is really target people that we had high esteem for elsewhere. So I'll mention some people here, I think, that are on our team that you might, people might not know about that are on our team, but you may know that based upon where they worked at previous, the Brad Schultzes of the world. I mean, Brett, we want to talk about a guy that knows AMD and knows in a way, he's an engineer and a hydrologist. So it's one of those things. So he knows the water side and the engineering side. So he's on our team, worked at OFM for a lot of years. Aaron Ponzer, who did a lot of work up in the Moshannon district office and things like that, particularly with AML reclamation and passive treatment systems. You can see how we're kind of targeting that you bring in the right people to target what you're trying to offer the community, what you can give them to help their project get from A to Z. And that's what we feel like we are. We feel like we're an all-service group. We feel like we can do AML. We have AML reclamation, passive AMD treatment, active AMD treatment. That's kind of like our big wheelhouse here with the building large active plants to bring back many miles of stream. But we're getting our foot into the technology side too here with just what we showed with the thermal applications that you can use in terms of mine drainage, and we're doing a solar. We have a coal to solar program where we're looking at coal mine acreage, impacted coal mine acreage, how to reclaim that in a way where one, you can either put solar on it, or worse, I don't look, maybe that's not the word, but at a minimum reforest it. You know what I mean? But like, there's so much there that we can be turning around in these communities. So much impacted land we can flip and turn it to the positive. And I think that's one of the things at Kleinfelder we've really been good at here. In a very short amount of time, we're not even through. The Abandoned Mine program really isn't even 3 years old, and like we have a pretty big footprint coming in. Like I said, particularly in active treatment plants, Shade Creek. We mentioned the Tioga River, Quay Cake Tunnel over on Black Creek, over by Bobby. We're getting ready to kind of tie up that design, and that's another 10, 12 mile restoration project. Banning down on the Youghiogheny River, big active treatment plant. And those are the types of things that I think we really excel at. So that's my pitch right off the top of my head. Unrehearsed, which is like how I like to do things.
Well, hey, if you with that, if you want, we will take a moment here just to present this ad from Kleinfelder, which we appreciate, which will help the podcast going forward here as we continue to look for additional sponsors that might allow us to get it on additional streaming platforms in time. But this is our first year and our first opportunity to get these podcasts underway once a month here for the next year, thanks to the Foundation for PA Watersheds. So with that, let me try and plug this Kleinfelder ad for you and take a few moments to listen in.
Kleinfelder has been dedicated since 1961
to helping communities thrive by delivering vital resources and infrastructure for a brighter future.
Our team of innovative engineers, scientists, and construction professionals
offer comprehensive services to improve transportation, water, energy, other private infrastructure,
and protect our environment.
We partner with our clients to understand the unique challenges they face
and address their needs with sustainable solutions.
Our diverse workforce cultivates ingenuity,
where employees are passionate about delivering the right solutions on every project
for the good of our clients, our communities, and the environment.
We are building a brighter tomorrow. We are Kleinfelder.
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 All right. Well, that was a really good ad there. So we're happy to.
Beautiful. The only problem was Tom wasn't in it.
Oh, I have a face for radio. For podcast. I have a face for podcast.
All right. And from here, do you want to take it away? Would you?
Yeah. That was sure. That was actually a really beautiful commercial. So well done. Impressed. Maybe we should hire you guys to do our podcast production.
I tell you what, we have a great PR department where it's just like, I know none of that stuff. I essentially whiteboard what I want, and man, they produce it. They're really good. So kudos to them,
Yeah. Okay, so we like to close each of our episodes with a piece of advice from our leaders to offer to our nonprofit watershed associations with respect to organizational capacity and sustainability. We know that's a big issue out there now with our watershed organizations. Do you have any words of wisdom to share with everyone?
Well, that's a good question. I almost feel, we talked about it a little bit here in the past, when they enacted Growing Greener in 2000, and that formed all the watershed specialists in each county, but that also exploded the Watershed Association, the volunteer grassroots level efforts. And then that kind of slowly faded as the money from Growing Greener got less and less through. And now what we're left with, and I think you guys would agree, are just those really, really strong ones that were able to kind of test the tide. And the reason they did that is because they have super, super passionate people who just kind of kept the train rolling. You know, the Tioga Concerned Citizens Group is, you know, one of the ones I'm thinking about. You know, Script and the Clearfield Creek Watershed Association, and one of the strong ones. Well, Mountain Watershed Associations. But there is now, like, there's all this money again, right? It's almost like it's even greater than 2,000, right? What was the maximum amount per year they were giving out in Growing Greener? Do you guys even remember? Is it like 30 million, 50 million, something like that? Bob, you remember?
I remember.
I don't know. But like, look what we're getting now. We're getting like $300 million per year for what, the next 12? I think we still have 12 years of this. And man, it'd be great to see those types of organizations form again, because there is a gap, and there's a lot of watersheds without like a caretaker. So, and it's hard to then funnel this money appropriately if you don't have that grassroots group on Watershed X, right? So, and like all those people that we mentioned at the T4Cs and Shade Creek Watershed Associations, the ones that kept going, a lot of them are older people, you know, and like we need an influx of younger people to keep this type of work going. And I think I see it happening a little bit, you know, just with like the amount of people going through the STEM programs at universities. There seems to be an uptick. I don't know if you guys, Bobby, I know you hired a lot from right out of, you know, school. Have you seen that? Because I get a sense that is happening.
Bobby might not be able to hear you. He's having technical difficulties again.
Like, I think he would agree with what I said there, and maybe that's what happens here. Is that, yeah, we've had a lull, but I think there's a lot of young people getting back into what we went to school for and what we had interest in, but just to get those people invigorated into the grassroots effort. You can be a professional and be a volunteer, right? Right,
yeah.
Ann? You can
be
a professional
absolutely.
and a volunteer. So just do it that way. And that's what I think. I don't know if it's advice or kind of like, you know, just like, that's what I would kind of leave with here, is that you can do both. And there are some gaps to fill.
Okay. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much. And I'm going to see if Bobby takes the next part.
Yeah. So, you know, Tom, we want to thank you for joining us today, and glad you're feeling better and recovering here. It's good to see you yesterday back in the anthracite region, and want to, you know, let you know that we're kind of thankful to have you as a friend and a partner in Abandoned Mine Reclamation and a colleague, and thank you for all your efforts, your work over your career. We really appreciate it, and we want others to kind of tune in for the first Fridays of every month here at 12 noon to 1 o'clock for a new episode of the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles that we'll be doing on a monthly basis here. And we have some interesting guests coming up that we're trying to line up. And so if you want to mark your calendars for next month, Friday, December 5th at 12 o'clock, we're going to be interviewing Don Kane Jr., who is the president of the Huber Breaker Preservation Society, an organization that I've long had a long-standing relationship with here, and the history of that effort and work to talk about some of the preservation efforts and some of the work going on the former site of one of the last stand-in coal breakers here that was torn down in 2014 here in Ashley, right adjacent to our office next to the Earth Conservancy, where we were able to reserve and reclaim 3 acres and turn it into a historic miners memorial park in honor of the miners and men and boys and so many others that worked in the mines. And Don will be here next month to talk about the work that's going on over there, and kind of restoration of a Loki and an opening of the number 5 slope, and some educational things that are over on site, and even how they've incorporated recycled iron oxide pigment into their permeable pavers that's at the location for where one of the memorials is located, that had been a project put together by a former president, Ray Clark, long friend of mine, passed away, who worked with me for 20 some years to put some efforts into doing the restoration work and educating a lot of our youth here in the Valley about our mining history. So stay tuned for that next month, and we thank you for joining us today. And with that, I'll let Ann close us out here.
Yeah, one last reminder is that we do have spots left for sponsoring our remaining episodes of our podcast. And you can go to the Epcammer store, which I'm putting in the chat right now. If you would like to sponsor and kind of do what Tom did here with Kleinfelder and give us a sales pitch in addition to your interview and maybe a commercial if you've got it, and even put it up on your YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook pages if you have any of those. And with that, thank you so much, Tom, for joining us today. It was a lovely chat. Yeah, and we're signing off. See you, everybody. Thank you.